Alright, we're a couple hours later now. I did some more running around and okay, finally I got this thing. I clamped the vise in the vise and I got going at the wire brush. And I mean, does it still look like I should throw it out? Man, it looks awesome. So I went over it pretty good with the wire brush, and I'm just I got it all apart. I took all the screws out. Everything came out very easily. And I'm just filing some of these grooves out to get it working even smoother. The T-slot on the bottom is full of junk in there. It's still got a lot of stuff in there. So I took a few burrs off. This was full of burrs. And it was slightly bent. But I think I got it right back to where it used to be. You know, I looked a little bit on I did a little bit of research last night, and I found that this vise is called a planer vise. And I'm just guessing that it must be called that because I couldn't find why they called it that. No one mentioned that, but because of this blade back, it's like a blade. I call it a blade. It's like a little planer blade, you know. So if you watch this thing, I'll put it back together now. That's the way it's supposed to work. So it's called a planer vise. I'm not sure why, but that's the reason. I'm guessing why it was called that. And it was made by the Skinner Chuck Company. The Skinner Chuck Company made three things. They manufactured chucks for lathes, drill chucks, and vices. And I think they were milling vices or vices like this. I don't think they were bench vices. So there's a few images came up of vices like this, and most of them had two blades. The two pictures I did come up with had two of these, what I call blades. They're I don't know what you call them. Isn't that beautiful? So the plate that goes on here that hooks onto here is I've got it in here. I'm taking it off, and this has got a beautiful radius right here cut into it, and it fits perfect right again. There's a little radius in here. I haven't done the jaws yet, so I think these are the original jaws. This one here has been hit a few times, and the marks on them perfectly match up with the marks on here. So, you know, the more you look at something, the more. And I noticed these three spots here, these three flat spots. So I think those are there to allow you to tilt the vise up on its side. All right. So I just got to do the jaws, and I'll show you the image on I took a picture with my phone last night, so I'll show you that. So does that look familiar? That's almost the exact same vise. And it's got the one blade, but it's got a little spot to bolt onto the front here, and this one doesn't have that. It's just, it's got a machined area here to clamp onto, and then there it is, Skinner Chuck Company, New Britain, Connecticut. And it's got a number 3.5. So I don't know if that's 3.5 inches. This one's 4 3/4. And what else we got here? Oh, there's the other one with the two. It's got the two little blade things here. And it's got this is definitely a milling vise. And it says it's tools for hard service. So the heaviest, strongest planer vise made. Holds either straight or tapered work. Rigid, withstands heavy cuts. So it allows it to pivot a little bit on this end. It's kind of a unique design. And even advertises that. This must be an ad. So there's the before. And there's the after. All right, well, you know what? I'm guessing it's got a nice casting, but there's a few little imperfections in the casting that they didn't take care of. Right here you can see that spot. It's just a big blob of, that should have been ground out. Which, you know, maybe it's a possibility. And here too is a little bump. Maybe it was made in the early 40s during the wartime, Second World War, or maybe even during the First World War. I don't know. The Skinner Chuck Company was in business from the information I found was around the 1880s to the 1950s, possibly. No one's sure exactly what year they went out of business, but they could have been acquired by another company, or they could have just closed their doors because of offshore stuff, you know. But they made good quality stuff. There was an article in Practical Machinist that mentioned that the chucks that they had were comparable to Cushman chucks. So, and Cushman are pretty well the best chucks made. So they must have made good quality stuff. So it wasn't their quality that was an issue. And I mean, here's an example. I mean, if I was some old 95-year-old guy, and I knew that it was some guy in the country somewhere restoring one of my vices I made in the 40s or 50s, I'd be pretty proud that I made tools that lasted that long. And you can see this has got a lot of use. So it didn't have an easy life, and it's still going. So it's good quality casting. Nothing broke on it, except for the lead screw stripping. It probably stripped. And that's happened to me on vices. It's common for lead screws to strip on cast iron. It's just not made to put up with overextended use. But it's been repaired, and this will go back into service. And the picture I showed you of, I just showed it to you with no paint on it. I'm starting to like that, but I'm torn now. I don't know. I'm not going to paint it this color here that I mentioned yesterday. It's not going to do it any justice. So I was thinking Battleship Gray, or I don't know. I'm torn now. Maybe I'll leave it like this. You can see it's machined here. I won't be painting this area or the jaws, of course. Any of these surfaces that touch each other, I'll leave the paint off there. But it's coming. Now you can see, you can tilt it up and it stays perfect. So maybe you could bolt it to an angle plate. And that's what those three surfaces are for. So maybe I'll get a can of paint and brush on some paint. I don't know. I like it the way it is right now, actually, but it would mean I have to wire brush it every 6 months or so, because it's gonna rust. But it looks pretty good now. Okay, we'll do a little test run. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that nice? Okay, the jaws still aren't in, but it's pretty much all back together. I still got to cut the threaded rod here. It's out of the picture a little bit, but I've got my nut. I bought 2 of them. The wrench size is 5/16, and the that's 11 threads per inch, 5/8. So I just got to cut the threaded rod. I think I'm going to braze that nut on there, and I think I'm just going to buy a breaker bar and either buy a 15/16 socket and keep it with this vise or something like that. I don't know if you can see that. The threaded rod and the nut. And I'm going to give it a good weld, and I think I'll also drill and put a rolled pin. So there's the finished product. I haven't really decided whether I'm going to paint it or not yet. But here's the picture of the chuck that I saw on the internet. The Skinner Chuck Company, New Britain, Connecticut, number 3.5A, it says right here. I couldn't make out what size what size vise this was. I can make out this little symbol. You can see it all here. I'll give you a close-up after, but I took some buffing compound and I went in there with a toothbrush and I brushed and got a rag and cleaned it out, did it a few times, and I can make out now, I can actually see the 4. It's a 4.5A. And I went and got my rule here. It's actually 4 5/8. Yeah, it's exactly 4 5/8. So I would call it a 4.5. So there you go, another mystery solved. So I can make out everything it says on the tag. I think this vise spent the first part of its life on a milling machine or maybe a shaper. And whoever used it, it's got milling marks. Very few milling marks on the jaws. I don't know if the jaws are original or not, but they could be. And I think what happened was this screw eventually stripped through the hole, threads gave up the ghost, and it probably spent some time on a shelf somewhere and didn't get used for a period of time. Finally, someone came along that was looking for a drill press vise and said, you know, if I rethread that hole with a piece of threaded rod, I could use that as a drill press vise. And that's probably how it got all these puck marks everywhere. I mean, they're everywhere. They're on this side of the vise. And of course, the saddest part is the right down in here, which totally destroyed this vise. But it's still really usable, and it's mostly cosmetic down here. But, you know, I close it like that. It looks fine. Don't tell anybody. So, you know, it's a fairy tale story because that's the first part of its life and the second part. And then the third part of its life, it's come into my hands and I've stripped all the old paint off. I made a new screw that's actually working a lot better. It's not bottoming. It's not hitting down here anymore. And I'm going to put it back to use again. So I was looking at shopping around and buying a drill press vise, and it might still be used on the mill. It's probably a really good milling vise. It can be tilted up on its side, which I really like that idea that you can bolt it to an angle plate, and you can use it like this. Let me get it in the picture there. So, okay, I'll bring you in close to that tag and give you that. And then, look at how clean it is now. Unbelievable. I'll bring you in. So you can clearly see a 4 there now. And you can see the 2. It's a half. Can't make out the 1 very much, but it's 4.5A. Can't see the Connecticut part too well. It's been hammered on, but the little symbol over here is very visible. Skinner Chuck. Why these companies went out of business is kind of sad. They made really high quality tools, but they're gone now. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching. Okay, I'm just adding this to the end here. It's a little addendum. That's the finished vise. I'm not going to paint it. I've decided. I thought about it. Tossed the idea in my head. I think it looks great the way it is. With all these drill marks and, you know, I can't really make it look too much better than it already does. So just stripping the paint off, making a new lead screw. It's really all I needed to do. And now it's going to go into service. So I think it looks great. I hope you enjoyed the video. I've got some upcoming, I am going to paint the milling machine. I've got some upcoming video of that. I haven't taken any video of it yet, but my plan is to do a small restoration of that. I don't really want to tear it completely apart, but watch for that coming up, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching.